Hello, Dan. I'm so glad to have you coming over here to BetaTalks. Welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
And you're all the way from New Zealand. So we're in the opposite parts of the world.
Yeah, totally. 12 hours apart we are.
Yeah. So yeah, here it's night and there it's morning, basically. Yeah. And the fascinating thing with this beta talk is that I actually get to meet my first twin type. We are the exact same 512 type, which is amazing, right?
It is kind of trippy when you think about how many types there are. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. If we would extend the number of types maybe to 1024, because I still think that the female male coin is another important coin. That would mean that we are almost the same type, but yeah, other than that, we have the exact same functions. So yeah.
I see it a lot like you. And I think one funny thing is that your YouTube channel is called 9 Coins. And that is what I called OPS because I thought that objective personality sounded dumb. But
Oh.
but 9 Coins, it has that little bit of blast to it because you're actually giving them some of the structure. So it's funny that we both gravitated towards a similar expression.
Right. Yeah. Proving that there is no free will or what? I think there is, but yeah, that's interesting. So you have just received your type like a couple of weeks ago, and I gather that you already pretty much knew what type you were, if I have understood everything correctly.
Yeah, I got 7 coins right.
Yeah.
And my guess prior to that was 8 coins right. So
wow.
The only thing I couldn't fully figure out was the second, third, and fourth animal in the stack. And being consumed last, that's because I refused to consume the possibility of consume last.
So did you think you had consume as not maybe savior, but third then, or?
Yeah, I thought I was either blast sleep consume play or blast play consume sleep.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So in either case, you didn't see your sleep as a savior.
No, I definitely don't. But because I think for us, it's missing the SE and sleep and other people, I can see them physically processing stuff or physically managing their body. And I'm like, whoa, that's so weird. I can't hear that happening in the world. Where is my body? Like, what is it feeling? Am I hungry? I don't really have that quick turnaround on processing the sensory, but everything else, I think, yeah, I process all the abstract stuff.
Right. Yeah. we're all in our heads, I think, the intuitives. Yeah, let's get into it piece by piece. So basically what I want to do is just to compare our experiences with the same functions, the same animals, and the same modalities, and compare, like a little bit of comparing notes, you could say. So first of all, before we start that, I'd like to know, like, how did you get into typology? Have you known about it for a while, or is it new to you?
I probably did an online MBTI test 12 years ago or something like that. Yeah, 12 or 13 years because I was flatting with some people and I remember annoying them about it. Trying to blast.
Oh, tell me more about that. I want to hear it. Like, how
Well,
did you annoy
I
people?
wanted them to take the test, but of course they were like they'd taken some science at university, so they had like enough know-how to push back as a skeptic about statistics, and I'd be like, well, that's no fun, like just do it and see what happens. But they both kind of refused, or they believed that every time you take the test, you get a different result. So why even bother?
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So you tried to kind of discuss the whole typology thing with your friends by making them take the test, but you didn't really succeed then, I understand.
No, I had more success with my family.
Mm.
So I used like the general ballpark that MBTI gives you to try to problem solve like where our conflicts came from, like where people are invested, what's likely to trigger or upset.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it can be really interesting. It's such a useful tool to have something to compare our behaviors with, like basically just to find a vocabulary, I guess, for the behaviors and the interactions between people, because these things are pretty hard to communicate about with people. So yeah, that's an advantage if you can do that with your family like you did. I did something very similar also when I got to know about MBTI at first, or even before that, Kiersey. I don't know if you've heard of Kiersey, but it's similar. It's basically the same as MBTI. So yeah, I made everyone that I knew take the test, and then we discussed it, and most people thought it was pretty interesting. Actually, people usually they enjoy talking about themselves, and once you get started, especially if it's in the evening, you have a good time talking about personality types. Right.
Definitely the ENFPs, they responded well to taking the test. It was always fun for them.
Yeah.
But I suppose intuition is a particular type of seeing the world, and to have those concepts like a function was like giving you the ability to see things that you had a sense were there, but you just couldn't grasp them. So it was really attractive to have
Yeah.
that new language to speak.
Right. Yeah. And you even got your like this INFJ type in the MBTI as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had a practitioner come to my workplace and we did the test, and I came out as an ENFP. And I always did on the online tests as well. So yeah,
Wow.
that was interesting. So yeah, but there have been a lot of people who have typed themselves, differently in the Myers-Briggs system, and then got something else in the OP. So it's nothing new. But usually when you type yourself as an INFJ, usually you aren't an INFJ. That's what I have heard and also seen so far. But in your case, it was actually true.
Yeah, when I first learned what introverted intuition was, it just hit so deep inside of me that that's the word for this thing that's been happening. And I haven't
Right.
understood. I felt like OPS sort of uses the words responsibility. Like I felt responsible to meet the world in an organized, abstract way, but I just had no, until that moment, I had no feedback that this was even a valid way to behave. But yeah, it just rang so true. And then I had a lot of ENFPs in my life that I could contrast myself against. So even if I had tested as that, I'd be, wait a minute.
Yeah, right. Because you could contrast yourself. I didn't really have that. So yeah. And the people that tested as INFJs yeah, when we were taking the tests, like they were very different from myself. So I couldn't really see that we were close to each other. But now understanding that there are 32 variations, within the system, every type has 32 different variations, then of course that makes sense. And I actually think that in the case of the INFJ, I don't think the audio is the most stereotypical one. I think rather masculine intuition is more, anecdotally at least, associated with the INFJs. So I think that was a confusion, because sometimes the NI, feminine NI, and the feminine NE can seem, on a surface level, a bit similar. And also I contrasted myself with people who had masculine NI, and I felt that it was so different. So yeah, I was totally lost, basically.
Yeah. It's hard to imagine having masculine NI, because I feel how flexible it is to the world. Yeah, there was once a time I was interacting with a guy on a dating app, and he was an INFJ. And when I'd return to our conversation, I'd look at the messages and I couldn't tell what I had sent and what he had sent,
Oh,
because
wow.
the way we used language was
Yeah.
just so similar. I'm like, who is talking to who? It was just so weird.
That's pretty awesome. Wow, that's also weird. Yeah. So still, you think he had a masculine NI or feminine?
This was probably before I knew about those concepts, so I didn't know how to test for it at the time.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Yeah. So you said something about intuitives, or this intuitive state of mind or brain isn't really meant for this world. I guess you said something along those lines. So I was thinking of jumping to that question that you actually had for me, but I'd like you to answer it first, if that's okay.
Sure.
Yeah, so you were asking me in what ways do you feel the world is and is not designed for you as an INFJ? So what's your take on that? Returning the question.
Yeah. I guess one of the funny features of MBTI is that INFJs create the biggest online groups, but are sort of a minority overall. And I always wonder, like, why is that? Why are we going online to find the sense of identity or to create it with each other? And there were pretty strong themes of being misunderstood, of carrying sort of an existential burden in the world, of clashing with the dominant culture, of being abstract rather than practical, of being misunderstood by one's friends and family. Lots of those sort of little indicators that INFJs weren't waking up and going, wow, this world was made just for me. Yeah, so that was kind of my sense that I assume you might have some similar feelings about.
Yeah, I have had a lot of similar feelings. I think, well, reality is more ST, I guess. So we are the opposite, being intuitive feelers, and our functions are really hard to measure or make sense of in the stereotypical way, I guess. So yeah, I think one of the things that have, kind of, I would say, in a way, been difficult is to feel that you have like a place in the world that is, accepted or respected in a sense. Because as long as I do the ST game, because, both you and I, we know how to do that game. Peacocking our demons, of course. But as long as I do that, everything is fine. But, when you let loose and you just relax and you are your full NF self, that's when you feel that that's harder to kind of, I don't know the word actually. This is a very intuitive process that I'm having right now. But I think you know what I'm saying. Maybe your English can fill in the blanks here for me.
I have like one or two memories of just points in my life where a friend of mine like liked something of mine and offered to buy it from me, and I'm like, what? I can't think of putting like a financial price on any of my items. Like, I'd rather just give it to you for free rather than to have this strange transaction with money. Yeah, that's like one one random little nugget.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's super interesting. Yeah, the way you value things and the way you see. Yeah, I can relate to that actually. Like sometimes when you are giving because you want to be giving, that's kind of suspicious, I think, in some people's eyes. It's not normal, quote unquote. It's like, why do you do this? What is your, agenda? What are your motives for doing this? But it's just something you want to do, and that's so hard to convince people about, I say, because that's not how the world works. So I guess that would be maybe my answer to your question, that it's hard to be yourself in a sense. Yeah, having these intuitive and feeling functions at the top. The FE wanting to give to the tribe and the intuition. Yeah. I'm rambling a little bit, but yeah, fill in the blanks again, please. I'm losing track. Do you have anything to add? You had a second example, you said.
I think to be an NF child is to confront a world that's demanding a different part of you before you have it available. Because we sort of grow back to front, like the NF development in many other people's lives where they fully become aware of the meaning of their lives. That's like a 50, 60, 70-year-old project, but we start in that space and the world is pushing us to make decisions about who we're going to be, and it's a real back to front experience of going through education and thinking about how you'll be an adult. It's a bit unfair,
right? Yeah, it is.
Because the ST shows up so late in our lives of actually seeing, this is how the world fits together. It's so different.
Yeah, it is. It is very different. Yeah. So I was thinking of the twin types that we have, the other twin types like Cesar Milan and Chiwetel, for example. Have you watched the classes? Have you been thinking about their functions compared to ours or your own functions?
I watched Cesar and I've watched a few interviews of Aziz, who's also our type twin. And I had watched Chiwetel in the past. And I think all three of them are just really lovely. And they show you that that double decider game where they can move from their perspective to another. And it's gentle and it's humorous. The other trait that I saw in Cesar and Chiwetel is the ability to communicate really quite personal and painful aspects of their life, but to sort of be fearless or to understand that sharing something personal isn't embarrassing, that it can actually help. There are other people that will be helped by such a story.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's cool. I think something similar as well. I relate more to them, even though they are male, if I compare to Tom Tom's wife, Lisa Billier, because she's a visual. And I think the modality actually matters quite a bit. I feel that I can relate more to the guys because of the modality. So yeah, it's pretty big difference with the intuition being masculine or feminine, as well as the decider, the extroverted decider, which is masculine in her case. Yeah. So the consume last, tell me more about that. Like, how was that a shock to you? Because it was for me too. What did you think?
My first reaction was, oh, but I feel like an infodom.
Right?
Information's so important to me. But
Yeah.
then I used Tom's tool to create the molecule and to actually see myself. And then I went and consumed all of David Shan's material on the energy coin. And our type specifically is like the most balanced form of energy dom that you can be, because we have double activated blast and double masculine consume. They're kind of structuring the way we operate by providing like stability on information. And I guess the part that I can most identify with is that I want information to move. I want it to come to people, to change things. I don't just want to like bounce it back and forward for the pleasure of doing that. So I'm like, okay, yeah, I want to see info become active. And
Yes.
yeah, so
To see the application of it in the real world, in the tribe.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I really just didn't realize how much of my life is an energy game, how sensitive I am to being calm or agitated, to being ready for something or not ready for something, that I do negotiate that all the time, but I just feel really bad at it. So I never thought it could possibly be
Yeah.
like dominant sounds, it sounds strong, but really I'm dominated by this horrible concern, which is to somehow be calm while not listening to my body.
Right. Like worrying for not having enough energy to do all the things you need to do, kind of. Yeah. Yeah. I think my life has also always been kind of a constant balancing between, you know, having enough energy to do everything that I want to do and that I need to do. And yeah, having the time, the downtime, the relaxation, and it's constantly a push and pull. I feel that the energy game, and I don't know if it's ever going to be like 100% stable. I don't know if you have found some techniques for juggling the energy game or getting the balance in your life.
Uh, there's definitely a social aspect to it. I think with play, people can they can lift your energy up, and they can make you feel safer and secure, or they can tear it away. That's the gamble. So I guess the quality of my energy maintenance is often a story of the quality of the relationships that I have. And when I can cultivate good ones, that's a channel for sustaining myself. And yeah, in lockdown, it's just really hard because I
Yeah.
can't do that in person.
Yeah, how does that work? Do you feel like a drain because you can't have that interaction as much? And yeah, everything is kind of slow, like in terms of your inner process and getting things done. It's like everything is slowing down. Is it that you're experiencing or something different?
Um, like I have some weights and some exercise equipment in here, and I'll just ask myself, do you feel ready to exercise today? And I don't always know what the answer is, but when it's no, I'm like, oh, okay, well, I won't fight that. I'll let you relax some more. Maybe tomorrow you'll be a bit more ready to tackle this. Yeah, but specifically with exercise, going to a class with other people and having them and their commitment to fitness, that gave me the strength to do
Right.
it. When I'm alone, it's a lot harder to create that motivation.
I feel you 100%. Like before the pandemic, I always went to the gym regularly. And then because of the pandemic, it stopped and I had to do different forms of exercise. And I do, but it's still so much harder to motivate oneself to do it on your own. I think we really need the tribe, like the something happening on the outside to kind of get us started for some reason.
Yeah. When I think about Dave, he talks about their energy management in terms of SI, like they're always trying to refine a process to give them more time to relax. Whereas with SE, it's like, what? Why do I, why would I need a procedure? I just take time and relax. I just do the actual, the physical act of um, shutting out noise and annoyances and stress and just yeah, controlling my physical environment. So it's a bit of a different game, but the goal is always there to raise the foundation of how strong you feel in the world and how capable you are.
That is really interesting. Like, could you elaborate just a bit on that one? I get the principle, but I'm still trying to grasp what you're saying, like the difference between SI and SE. Can you clarify what you just said? It was super good.
Yeah. Dave and Shan's motto for Energy Dom is work hard, play hard. And I'm like, I don't know if I really identify with that. I'm like, relax hard, then work hard. Like I want to create that safety and calmness and energy and then use it. I don't want to have an SI tactical plan for how the more processes I can manage, the more downtime I eventually get. I just do it back to front. I have to have the energy first, then I use it. I don't just
Yeah.
over structure everything. And yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It won't work for our functions to have that step-by-step structure. There needs to be kind of a flow instead for our functions, I think, where we go back and forth with the rest and the work, and it's fine to actually rest for quite a while on the front end and then work. It's a bit different from maybe also how society in general works, at least if you look back in history. Traditionally, you always wake up early in the morning and you do everything early in the day and so forth, but I'm not sure that applies with this function stack, to be honest. I don't know if you can relate to that, but yeah, I feel I have to follow my body more than the norms on the outside, if you see what I'm saying.
That's good.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking of, like, I'm sure it plays in with the function somehow. Like some people, especially the sleep lasts, they seem to be able to just keep going and going. And, and I can do that even if I wanted to. I know that. So, yeah.
I guess like one story Dave tells is when he goes to a shopping center, he parks the car and then he rests before going into the store. I'm like, I wouldn't even leave the house if I didn't have all the energy I knew I needed. I would
Yeah.
not leave the front door. I wouldn't like plan to like get a little bit of it back halfway through. I'd be like, no.
Right. Yeah. But if you have to go and you are leaving the house, then how do you go about it? Like, do you do the same as Dave, or?
Um, I I can't see myself doing it that way. I kind of just have um, this is going to be a complicated metaphor, but if you've ever watched a movie where people have to go into the radioactive space, like the nuclear reactor or the nuclear submarine, and they have like something that tells them about their exposure to radiation, like it moves from white to gray to black when you've had too much exposure. Every time I leave the house, I feel like that starts happening, that that my white patch is becoming darker and darker and darker, and I have to get back before I'm overexposed to radiation.
Right. Yeah, that's what it's like to have sleep as a savior. Yeah, very true. Right. I was thinking of I actually watched you on Kendrick's interview. I think you did it yesterday or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I had like, it was interesting to watch you because I felt like you were this kind of a storyteller. I don't know if you've ever heard that from other people, but I have the feeling when I listen to you that you are kind of this guy who knows how to tell a story, share a story, and make people follow the story. Is that something you're aware of or have thought about, heard from others before? Just a detail that I picked up on.
I think it is, it's something I can do one-on-one, because I don't know if it's the double feminine blast, but I have to see you hearing my story. I have to I have to engage in that whole connection. And if you add 2 or 3 more people in, I'm just like, I can't get the feedback. And so I just become quiet. Like sometimes I will feel, oh yeah, I'm going to a party. I feel so social. And then I get there and I can't even make sentences come out of my brain because I don't know how to speak to more than one person. Like one person's enough. They're complicated enough just being them and telling them something that I think is relevant to our connection. But I'm always impressed when someone can just speak to like 6 or 12 and I'm like, but then I'm like, what are you, why are you telling us all this?
Right, because it gets so personal. I think with our functions that, as you are saying, that the connection between people, they are special, like each connection is special and unique. So it's hard to blast to a whole crowd because you don't have that authentic connection to the crowd as you have with each and every individual in the tribe. So you will need to adjust your blast to the person you're talking to. And that will not be the same for everyone. I think maybe that's part of the NF blast, I guess, because it's scanning the values, I guess, the people that we're talking to have. And if there are more people in the crowd, certainly the values will differ and it's harder to speak to them all in the same way. I don't know if that makes any sense to you.
Yeah, I think the more people I speak to at once, the more likely I'm going to really seem energy dumb and really silly because I can't like control the details of being serious. So I will act out, or I just can't see myself telling like a story that progresses. I just want to like be a bit silly and then throw the energy back to them to like get some ping back.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, maybe it's the demon play as well that we have. I'm just thinking that if you are talking to several people at the same time, it's a lot to handle, all of the pingback for us. Like we need to process as we go, and that kind of slows us down in terms of blasting, in terms of interacting. I'm just thinking about the theory here. Not sure where I'm going with this, but anyways, so maybe there is too much pingback if the crowd is diverse. While if it's just, between four eyes or a very limited group, then the pingback becomes more, it's easier to handle it.
Yeah, that's a great way of saying it. I guess it makes me want to ask you how you see play being active in your life. Yeah.
Yeah, the way I see my animals basically is that they are all, the lower they are in the stack, they are always serving the animal above, So, for example, my blast is when I use my understanding to somehow direct or guide the people around me, the quote unquote tribe. But in order to do this, I need to have some information. So then my sleep will have to serve the blast. So I need to understand, sleep process, the things that are relevant to the tribe that I live in, like what matters to the people in my tribe. So my sleep will be revolving around that need. And then I cannot just sleep process like on nothing. So I need to get information into that sleep process box, you could say, the NITI. So I go down and I use my SF play, so gathering more information about the tribe, about how the tribe works by engaging with people. And then last, the double masculine consume, which is kind of aggressive. So now I basically already know the needs of the tribe. I know what I understand. I also know what I don't understand. So now I can go in very focused and look for the relevant information to kind of understand what I need to understand and then to use it for the tribe. So it will be kind of niched, the things that I am learning. And it will always be, what is needed here and now for the tribe that I am in for the moment, So that is also how my interests can vary. So say I'm in a different context with a different group, with different people, then I will need to understand new things. So my consume last is actually based on what need I have in the context I am in, So basically that is how I see it. They are always serving from the bottom and up to the top. How do you see them?
Hearing you talk, it makes me realize that in my adolescence or growing up, I did trust people first. I trusted the tribe first, and only later did I learn to trust my own ability to consume and to set some distinctions. But yeah, that's, a lot of people think I'm quite naive, and I think that little play above consume is one of those aspects where I'm open to I'm quite open as a trait, but to receive from people, yeah, I definitely think that the human need of control shows up across all of my animals. Like, it's blast and control, it's sleep and control, play and control, and consume and control. It's like right across all of them.
Yeah, it is so true. Would you like to describe more? Tell us more about that, like how the control plays into each stage, each animal.
I'm only at the beginning of processing that concept. I just really recognize it, that even compared to other blast sleep plays who aren't driven by control, like the way that my animals manifest is all about either structuring abstract understanding, controlling what physically happens to my body. And yeah, I guess compared to ENFPs, I find self-control and denial really simple, while some ENFPs really struggle with saying no to their own wants. And that's just because control is like a demon impulse for them.
Right. Yeah. That's so interesting. I had like a follow-up question on that. See if I can get it. Yeah. Organizing the concepts. How do you do that?
That's a good question. I think sleep processing, being FM, it's actually like the only time I'm intensely visual is when I'm really processing stuff. They just sort of show up imagistically in my mind. Shan has one excerpt where she says, where she's interacting, she reflects on talking to audios about their visualization, and she's like, oh, their visualizations are all kinetic, like there's shapes and movements and twists. And I sometimes I just have an idea, but I'll let it be like a piece of paper, and I'll fold it and fold it and fold it, and I'll just see, like, what does it feel like it touches? What conflict or contradiction or some, it's like a kinetic visual playground. And that's, yeah, I wish I could make it happen on command, because sleep is a bit mysterious when it triggers.
Yeah.
But I guess I have a blast obligation to process stuff enough to be able to tell someone about it. And yeah, so there'll be a blast aspect and a sleep aspect, but they're quite different.
Yeah. Can you recall any examples when you kind of had a visual experience of organizing a concept? As I understand it, you are kind of researching something, or so?
Yeah, I totally can. So I'm using, one of the frameworks I have is called phenomenology, and it's a philosophy of trying to figure out what perceptions are like in people's lives. And I loved the theory, but I felt that the part of it that I was interested in was sort of missing. If you're familiar with, I forget her name, but she has a video on NESI as like multiple eyes looking at one object.
Oh, yeah, that one. Yeah, I think I know which one you mean. I'm not sure who it is, but yeah.
So I'm like, okay, great. But my question is, once you have one object, what's the story of moving to the next one? And that is something I worked out a little bit visually, that I suppose part of my thesis is about how does a concept like an I statement, I am an INFJ, how does that become a feeling, become a memory, become a basis of like problem solving and creativity? The way our minds move, I think that's the story of the world that fascinates me, is not just, well, what are all your ideas, but it's actually how your consciousness moves from INFJ as a concept to something personal to something that you play with. There's all different parts of your mind that concepts open up. But I couldn't figure that out just with language. I had to just let myself play visually and think, oh yeah, there's a movement that I'm trying to track. And it's not showing up in what I'm reading, but I can sort of get a visual sense that it's there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I do that too, like what you're saying.
Yeah, like another example would be, I am a Republican. Like
Mm,
that's a declaration you can make with words, but then it's also a social reality. It's like a strong sense of conviction and maybe also fear. I'm like, well,
mm,
I want to be able to map, like, what does it look like to have a mind that jumps between things? Because a lot of research methodologies, they just want to get one type of data. They don't want to talk about how, um, like, even how emotion becomes part of life, because emotions are
right.
often dismissed as irrational, but
Yeah.
they're made rational because they're stitched in with, the way our minds work.
That is so true. So yeah, and that ties into the question we had in the beginning also, like how it is to have this function stack in this world, because we see those things, and of course they tie in with the reality because we're talking about coins. So if one side of the coin is feeling, then the other is thinking, and the same with the sensory, then the other side is intuitive. So they are as real, both sides, but yeah, there is a lot more focus on one of them, and if you look at it as a society. You did have another question as well to me. I'd like to ask you that question first, if that's all right.
Yeah.
I think they were really deep and really good questions, and kind of hard to answer, but interesting, super interesting. So the second one was, what was one of the most significant realizations that having consumed last delayed for you? So in other words, we have consumed last, and because of that, we may have missed something important, missed to understand something important, or understood it later in life, maybe. Just translating both to myself and to the viewers. So how would you say that that applies to you?
I guess one way we talk of consume is to consume for the self. And that particular part of it is the real thing I lack. Like in general, I consume just fine. But it's just for the self that's such a unique type of engaging with the world. I have a really clear memory of sitting in, the philosophy of human nature, like one of my first ever experiences of higher education. And the professor said, well, I'm a determinist. And I was like, what? How can you possibly think that? And I just put up a wall,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, that's a gross idea. There's no way that determinism explains the world that we live in. But maybe 10 years later, or even 15 years later, um, I'm pretty much a determinist. So my consume last impulse to block out something which is an option for the self, I learned to recognize that um, that feeling I shouldn't always trust, that
Mm.
disgust and, distrust of something, um, that I was better off entertaining the option a little bit further and learning a little bit more.
Mm.
And that's probably happened. There's probably like six, I can't name them for you, but there's probably six really key things like determinism that, that I had just shut out and kept away from myself. But
Right.
consuming it as an option for the self is really important for, um, creating your own identity.
Mm.
Otherwise, you've just you've just grown up in a vacuum, like you've not let anything come in, and you've everything is just,
Circling around
yeah, yeah,
in
yeah.
a closed system. Yeah. Yeah, and that's not really maybe living. That's more conserving something. Yeah, that's an interesting point for all of us who are consume last. I think probably I have done similar things as yourself. I'm just thinking of like, even in terms of getting my type, since I didn't get it right from the beginning, like you did. So for me, that was a lot of processing and kind of starting to see it. It was, in a sense, lack of consume, I'd say, that made me not see myself as clearly, maybe. I don't know. Not just that. I mean, it's also pretty normal to see yourself a bit upside down with the human needs and so forth. So, but yeah.
Was there one coin in particular that you were wrong about and you thought that was quite shocking?
Yeah, well, I think, let me see, which one was the hardest to process? I saw the FE pretty fast because I thought I was an intuitive and a feeler, but I got the human needs in reverse. So I thought I had extroverted intuition and introverted feeling. But pretty fast, I understood that, you know, the DE being tribe above self, that really, yeah, that was me, you know. So I could kind of buy that. And then I just had to process for a while that the FETI axis was the one I was on. So I just had to switch what I had been thinking before. And I also think my understanding wasn't that deep, really. It was very surface level. So yeah. The second part, and that was much harder for me, was the intuition. Like I knew I had intuition, but that it was introverted. And that is because I compared myself to people who had like an intense amount of masculine intuition, introverted intuition, and feminine sensory. And I have always been very unmovable with the facts, quite rigid, you know, as it is when it's in a demon state. Then you are pretty locked on whatever facts you have there. And the feminine sensory is very different, especially the one in the demon state, and then the masculine intuition. It's so like that took me quite a while to process. Like, how can I have introverted intuition? But then when I saw the difference between the modalities, that's when it clicked for me. Like, yeah, there is a difference if you have like, yeah, feminine intuition and masculine sensory. That is very different from the other modality. So yeah, that was the hardest one for me.
Yeah, I started thinking that I was FF, and I owe somebody in the community thank you for. I was telling a story about how I control everything in my environment, and they're like, "Wait a minute, if you're pushing onto the world, that sounds a bit masculine." And I'm like, "Oh, okay," but my perception was, I'm so weak and I'm so vulnerable to everything that it's pushing on me. But yeah, I'm also pushing back quite a lot.
Yeah, we are, and as you say, we're not always aware of it either. I wonder if that is because we are, like, our feminine functions are at the top, so we are very soft and movable. But then the further down you go, like with the TI and the SE, then we are quite unmovable actually. But that's nothing that shows in the front end. So yeah, I'm just processing as I am talking. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, do you understand?
Yeah, like I once filled out a dating profile and I called myself a Death Star made of memory foam. So like soft and squishy, but
Right.
inside is some dangerous machines.
That pretty much sums it up. Yeah, that is. And yeah, if you're pushed like far enough or hard enough, then that masculine TI will come out and defend you, you know, will take it for the longest time because of the feminine FE. But when finally enough is enough, then that little masculine TI will come out and punch. Is that something you have experienced?
Yeah, I really strongly identify with the INFJ door slam.
Okay.
Like I will put up with stuff for a long time, but I can just tell if it crosses a threshold, there's like a maybe that this is recoverable, and then it's like, well, no, this is an unrecoverable situation. Shut it out, block it, just never engage again because it's no good.
Right. Yeah. I'm not sure I have that. I don't identify with that door slam thing as much. But what I do know that what happens to me is that I'm looking for all of the logics and all of the facts. And I just want to, prove my case that this is dumb and wrong. And here is the proof, and now the world is going to know about it. That's kind of how I fight when it's been going on for too long.
Yeah, I have one brother that's very opinionated online. He's so soft in person, but once he gets behind a keyboard, he's a monster. And I'm currently blocked because I call him out on stuff. But I think he's got feminine sensory. And I'm just like, I can't believe how you'll put out these ideas and just have no facts behind them. Like it's just so weird how it works back to front with a different modality. Or I'm just like, boom, here's the facts. Get it.
Right. Yeah. Masculine TI can be really, tough, I guess, because it's not going to mask itself in any way like the TE can do. It can play and be a little bit, liary, so to speak. But the masculine TI won't do that really. It's just what it is. Straightforward. But I guess that should help you when you are researching and doing your thesis and all that, like the search of truth, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely does. And I think even consume last can sometimes be a benefit because it just means that I can focus on something that's small. Because if I was always consuming the big picture, it would just be, like it'd be hard to focus on that one grain of sand when the beach is so massive. Yeah.
So do you think then, because we are consume last, that we are more detail oriented when we're consuming? Like we're looking for that one specific thing that will kind of unlock the understanding?
Probably, yeah. I think our skill is that we can control how much comes in, so we can set the scale for the way that we ask questions of the world. Yeah.
Yeah. Two sleep saviors talking. And it's interesting because we're processing as we are talking. I was also thinking about something that you said in Kendrick's interview. I thought it was pretty interesting. You were talking about controlling sensory overload. And would you like to tell me a little bit more about that? Like, how does that play out for you on a day-to-day basis? Like, is this something other people can notice when they get to know you? How does it show? What kind of sensory is it that you need to control?
Yeah, it's definitely like I had an ex-boyfriend who lived with a chef, and he'd always want me to taste things, and I wouldn't want to taste new things. So in that instance, he could really tell that I was controlling the sensory. But like even in this room, I have the window covered, and when I need airflow, I also have like blankets because I don't want to feel the breeze. I control all different layers of experience. Um, I'll get upset if there's noise that I can't control or block out. And I think I talked to Kendrick about the way that I walk. And
Yeah.
one of the things I didn't say is that when you actually walk with earplugs in, you can hear the impact of your skeleton on the ground. So I choose to walk on the balls of my feet because it makes my skeleton quieter. And
Yeah.
I'm calmer when I can take soft steps rather than banging steps. So
Wow.
in that degree, I don't fit what Dave calls masculine SE because he's all about the punching and the kicking and the slamming, and I'm like, no, it's like I do it in the reverse. I stop all that stuff from happening by controlling it. Yeah.
Wow.
Although
Yeah.
sometimes I slam car doors.
That happens. Yeah. Right. I I cannot identify with all of what you're saying, but I'm curious about the chef and the food thing. Like, how come you didn't want to taste the food?
Taste is like an experience you can't consciously stop. Like once it's happening, you can't close your eyes or block your ears. Like even if you spit it out, the taste is still going to be there. So you've got to be prepared for an experience that you lose control over
Yeah.
to a degree. And yeah, I guess it just all over my life. Like if you could just see my life span, there'd be like little bits where I've let a new piece of food come in, like all the way. Like I'm constantly learning to cope with just how detailed sensory data is, how how powerful all our senses are, but taste is a really strong one.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I am kind of opposite in that regard. I think I pretty much taste anything and everything, and usually I like it. But yeah, I think that sensory overload, I guess that can play out in various ways, depending on maybe like, I mean, there must be more than just type, I guess. Whatever chemistry it is in our bodies that determines what we are sensitive to. So yeah, some sort of sensory overload. For example, if I'm processing something, I don't want like, people running around in the house or disorder, because I'm in a process and I need to focus on what I'm doing, what I'm thinking about, my day. And, if there are other people around, because when you have the FE, you will always be, at least for me, I don't know how FE plays out for you as a man, but I think as a woman, at least, you are kind of reinforced when it comes to using your FE. So you will always be kind of prepared to attend to other people's needs. So I think that is also part of why I need to block out, the sensory, quote unquote, overload, because it will, and that includes people and movement in general, because that will require my other functions, my FE, for example, and then I cannot do my anti-sleep because, yeah, the FE will triumph it. So how do you experience having FE as a male? Like Is that something you've reflected on?
Yeah, I definitely never identified with masculine competitiveness. I don't even like to play games where you have to like be mean to people and like win just for yourself. I'd rather play a game where where it's interactive, or it doesn't matter who wins, or you win by working together. That's just, yeah. So I was never into sports.
No sports at all, or?
Now just for myself, I'll swim, I'll walk or jog and do gym stuff. But yeah, FE, I just, because I grew up in a really Christian environment, FE belongs as a value, as a virtue. It's kind of Christ-like.
In that context, it's, yeah, I understand. Yeah.
Yeah. So that sort of was like a little safe bubble to be in. But I couldn't understand why not everyone had FE. It just seemed like if everyone had FE, the whole way that we prioritize values in the world, which is what the function does, would be so different. Like, yeah, even in Christianity, it doesn't make sense that you can have a mega church and there's homeless people in your city.
Yeah, right.
That's just not the way the value system should play out.
No.
So finding myself in a world that didn't always show me what I thought FE would produce out of people, that was really jarring. And I still don't even think I've coped or internalized or processed what that means even now. Yeah.
Do you feel like, because you talked earlier about engaging with the tribe and somehow also being energized by the tribe, like now when you have the lockdown, you get the contrast of it. So somehow that tribe function seems important still.
Yeah, well, luckily Discord is a way to get, like, even just to hear people talk and not even interact with them. It's a way of feeling closer to people.
Yeah.
And I've definitely used that as a tool to yeah, have an artificial sense of community. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's awesome. Everything you've said, it's super interesting. And I'm probably going to rewatch this interview quite a few times since you're my twin type, and see what I can understand. I was thinking of, finally, I had one last question. It's just that it left my consciousness. The feminine NI. Of the whole thing. Yeah. Do you have like any insights, or I'm thinking of our type, like anything that is that's making sense to you now, that you know about your type, that didn't, that you didn't really understand before, like any epiphanies or new understandings or something along those lines?
I definitely think that I'm starting to appreciate what it means to be energy dominant. And the best way that I can describe it is that energy dominant people, we have daily energy needs that if we don't meet them, we'll become like stressed and upset. But with consume last, like the hole that consume last creates, that takes a long time before that hole becomes dangerous. And so it's teaching me to think about my own self and to embrace those needs. And then I guess the story for infodoms is that they have much smaller scale informational requirements that they've got to keep that movement in balance, or they'll have a negative reaction, whereas their energy deficits, that is a weeks, months, years dilemma. So yeah, just owning that energy is a really important thing to manage, and that part of it is always going to be drawing in the SE that I'd rather keep out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. That's interesting. Yeah. I was thinking of one last final thing also on the when we are in the Discord, both you and I, pretty often we are on silent. I mean, we do talk every once in a while, but why do you think that is? Like, I'm just thinking we have double activated blast and still we are quiet. So how do you explain that?
I think our blast with FE is also it's like a strong sense of appropriateness. So I'll be watching and I'll just go, no, it's not appropriate yet for me to say something. It's not appropriate yet. And then it'll just line up and I'll be like, unmute, blah 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 blah, back to mute.
Right. Yeah. That is so true. That is what I'm doing too. Do you sometimes feel that you just want to jump in, but the timing isn't quite right yet, so you just hold yourself back?
Sometimes not really. Like if I have a question or I want to topic change, I'll just say, hey, I'll because I can do it quite quickly. I don't feel like I'm imposing, because I'm not going to say, here's a question, but it's going to take me 5 minutes to even ask it.
No.
Yeah.
No, the NF blast is pretty soft. Plus it's double feminine in our case. Yeah, that was actually something I was meaning to ask earlier. So I have had like 3 last questions now. But your double feminine blast, like, how do you see your blast? Because yeah, that was also one of the coins that I had a really hard time seeing in myself. How do you experience that?
Yeah, I didn't see it in myself to begin with, because I was really just tracking how often do I speak? How often do I actually give someone a verbal lesson? And I'm like, I don't really do that. It doesn't take up that much of my time. But the whole machinery of my mind is always putting me in a position where I'm ready to blast. It's just that I don't have to do it unless the situation calls for it. And I think, like, if you name search me in Discord, you'll see that I'm constantly pinging and lesson learning and learning from others as a process. But it's not always verbal.
Right. Yeah, it's not speaking, because I was also confusing blast with talking, like a talk machine somehow. And yes, sure, I can talk, of course, but yeah, I couldn't quite identify with that. But it's so much more than just talking. It's interacting and directing and managing, I guess, encouraging. Yeah, there are so many aspects of the blast that I did not see or understand earlier that made it so hard for me to see it in myself.
Yeah, I had to watch community members on like the 4-way Zoom calls before I could go, okay, you can get 4 different INFJs, or you can see blasts in different positions. And it was only by making those comparisons. I couldn't just learn it as a definition. I had to see it in action.
Right. Yes. So what would your definition be like at this point?
That I feel obligated to have ready the tools and resources and and questions that move people closer to asking meaningful questions about their life. That's what I want to do. I don't really want to teach you how to do something, except how to learn to be better at self-reflection, or whatever the NF thing is, respecting FE, even if you don't have it, and organizing ideas, and owning that, I guess.
So you kind of also want to teach people to reflect on themselves. That would be the teaching part in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But not maybe a step-by-step procedure, of course, but yeah. Yeah, I do that too. Like, yeah, that's very NF. All right. So I think I have used up our time, and I'm so grateful that you came in and wanted to share some of your thoughts and experiences as this Caesar Milan type that we are. And I hope to speak to you more in the future. I will also have like a second round of the BetaTalks in the future. So if you're willing to come on, then you're welcome back. So
Wonderful.
thank you.
Okay. Great to meet you, Alexa.
Same, Dan.